Hello, and welcome to today's episode. Why does your brain passionately defend your worst habits the exact moment you try to quit them? When we try to force sudden change, our internal stress response can flood the system and drive us straight back into old, comfortable routines. This raises a vital question. Is engineering physical friction into our daily environment the key to rewiring our neural pathways? Or does the true anchor lie in emotional regulation and self-compassion? Understanding this mechanism is the difference between achieving sustainable growth and hitting a frustrating neurological dead end. The discussion is about to begin.
So why is it that the harder you try to forcefully quit a bad habit, the more your brain actually fights to keep it?
Oh, we have all been there. You swear off sugar or doom scrolling, right? And then you just find yourself doing it twice as much the very next day.
Exactly. So today we are examining the cognitive and, neurological mechanics of breaking bad habits. And I fall firmly on the side of structural replacement.
Right.
That means engineering your environment to widen the gap between an urge and an action, which allows neuroplasticity to actually do its work.
And I look at the inevitable reality of relapse. I argue that without emotional regulation, and specifically breaking the shame cycle, those structural changes are going to collapse the second you face any real stress. So self-compassion rather than environmental design is the true anchor of breaking a habit.
Well, let's start with what a habit actually is neurologically. Your basal ganglia runs these routines on autopilot, right? Because they serve an underlying need, like comfort or a quick dopamine hit.
Sure, they serve a purpose.
Right, so if you just forcefully rip a habit out, you create this vacuum. To effect true change, you have to intercept the urge before it becomes a fast-firing impulse.
Okay, but how are you doing that in the moment?
By adding a tiny bit of structural friction, like requiring yourself to put your phone face down in another room for 10 minutes before using it. You give your prefrontal cortex time to step in. You're slowly laying down the physical neural pathways for an entirely alternative behavior.
I mean, you say we need to build a new path, but you are completely ignoring what happens on day 5 when that structural friction inevitably hits a roadblock.
A roadblock?
Yeah, you will eventually pick up the phone. You will eat the junk food. And when you do, the true anchor of the habit kicks in, which is the shame cycle.
Well, sure, but
If you treat that slip-up with internal hostility, your brain literally releases cortisol. That stress spike shuts down your prefrontal cortex.
Right, the exact part of your brain you were relying on to make a better choice.
Exactly. To soothe that stress, your brain immediately defaults to its fastest dopamine delivery system, which is the exact bad habit you were trying to break.
Wait, but even if stress is the trigger, you still need an alternate physical route for that energy to go, right? I mean, that intense internal friction is exactly why a structural change has to be gradual.
But gradual doesn't stop the stress response when you fail.
Well, we aren't triggering the brain's threat response with sudden deprivation, though. Like, if you ban all sugar instantly, sure, the amygdala freaks out.
It doesn't just freak out, it becomes a passionate lawyer defending the habit.
Oh, absolutely.
When faced with strict structural rules, the brain will litigate on behalf of a croissant, like its life depends on it. That internal resistance is a hardwired self-protection mechanism against sudden starvation or, deprivation.
Exactly, which is exactly why you have to lower the stakes. You don't ban the croissant, you just say, I will wait 10 minutes before I eat it.
Right.
You bypass that threat response completely. The resistance remains low and you systematically build a new behavioral network without sounding the alarm bells.
That sounds really clean in theory, but let's look at the messy reality. Even with low stakes, you are going to stumble. Sure, slip-ups happen.
And listeners are probably rolling their eyes at the idea of self-compassion as a hard science. But let's look at the actual mechanism. Shame is literally feeding the habit.
Because of the cortisol.
Right. If your internal voice acts as a whip instead of coach, The resulting cortisol floods your system and demands the old soothing behavior. Compassion isn't some soft, feel-good idea. It is the active neurological mechanism that interrupts the shame loop. Without it, you stay stuck.
I mean, I agree that beating yourself up isn't productive. But a structural relapse doesn't magically erase the new neural pathways you have built over weeks of practice.
It might not erase them, but the new structural network is still physically there in your brain. You just temporarily fired up the old one. If you rely purely on self-compassion without having engineered new structural routines, you literally have nowhere else for your brain to go when the urge arises.
But without self-compassion during a slip, those new pathways will be abandoned entirely. Your brain will always choose the path of least resistance when it's under the acute stress of failure.
Well, I think we do hit a hard point of convergence here. Relying on sudden, aggressive force to break a habit is just a neurological dead end.
Oh, 100%.
We completely agree that trying to violently rip out an ingrained behavior creates this overwhelming internal resistance.
Absolutely. The brain rebels against a whip. It shuts down. You simply cannot punish your way out of a dopamine loop.
So, the next time you find yourself falling back into an old routine, ask yourself, do you need to spend more time structurally engineering the friction in your environment, or do you need to genuinely forgive yourself so your prefrontal cortex can finally get back online?
As we bring this discussion to a close, we return to the core of our exploration. Is structural replacement through environmental friction or emotional regulation through self-compassion the true anchor for breaking a bad habit? When you next slip into an old routine, will you redesign your environment or practice self-forgiveness? Exploring these complex systems reminds us that lasting growth is a patient journey of understanding rather than a battle of sheer force. Thank you for sharing your time and curiosity with us today. Until next time, keep questioning, keep reflecting, and take care.